Hi, welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about this weirdo film, Incense for the Damned, also known as Bloodsuckers in the United States. Incense for the Damned was a British film directed by Robert Hartford-David. Features Peter Cushing and Patrick Macnee. Let's go back and talk about Robert Davis's previous horror efforts. His first one was The Black Torment. Now, actually, I don't really consider this a horror film, but it is spooky. The Black Torment took place in the 1700s. It was about a lord of Devon, England, and he came home with his new bride to find out that someone in his town had been murdered, and people are blaming him. It's really more of a mystery than anything else. It has a good plot twist at the end. You know what? It reminds me of like a Scooby-Doo type mystery where it's like spooky, but like nothing scary is actually happening. There is someone running around posing as a ghost. It's not really a ghost. So I would call this one a good mystery. I gave that one an 8 out of 10. That was 1964. Then Robert Hartford-Davis did Corruption, where this one is really great. Corruption is where Peter Cushing is a surgeon, and he's dating someone about half his age who is a model. He's like pretty much obsessed with her, and she likes to party, and he goes to a party with her, and he's twice the age of everyone at the party, and this photographer is flirting with her, basically trying to get her to take her clothes off for a photo shoot, right? And so Peter Cushing ends up fighting the guy, and they knock over this lamp, and it lands and burns his girlfriend's face. Then he has to harvest skin off of young women's faces, and the movie gets crazier and crazier and crazier as it goes on. That one gets an 8 out of 10. It's a high 8. Peter Cushing is really good in it. It takes place in the modern day 1968, as opposed to most Peter Cushing horror films that take place in like the 1800s and stuff like that. So Corruption is really good. I would watch that one. I mean, really, both of these are good. Okay, so now we come to Incense for the Damned. You know, I like this poster better. Okay, Bloodsuckers. I don't think there's any incense in this movie, but anyway, what's going on in this movie? So it starts off at Oxford University, and people are talking about this guy Richard, who has gone to Athens because he studies Greek mythology, and he's studying in Athens, and he hasn't come back, and so they're worried about him, and then they get a phone call saying that he's in trouble with the law, so a group of friends go to retrieve him. That's the basic premise. And this movie is pretty bad. Didn't really like it. Disappointing. Peter Cushing's in the first scene, and then he's not in it again for an hour. I thought maybe he wasn't going to be in it again at all. He shows up an hour later, but he's not in the whole Athens part. They go to Athens for most of the movie, try and get this guy back. After like 52 minutes, a girl bites the guy's neck. So she's a vampire. Okay. It takes 52 minutes to get to the vampire part of the movie. Until then, there's like chase scenes across Athens that are like not that great. They're okay. There's like these weird fight scenes. A lot of the music sounds like it could be from a James Bond movie or something like that. The plot is a little hard to follow. It's very simple, but like the specifics are hard to follow. Basically, they're just looking for the guy, and then they find him. He doesn't really want to leave. His girlfriend's upset because he's with this other girl. The other girl's a vampire. They end up taking him back to England, but whoops, he's a vampire too. Okay, when they go back to England, they go back to Oxford University. Peter Cushing is in the rest of the movie, but as a smaller supporting role. Overall, it's pretty boring. The parts that I liked were the fact that it was shot in Athens, so it was interesting to look at what I assume are ancient Greek ruins that they're shooting on, so that was cool. Other than that, It's a vampire movie with very little vampires on screen. I think there's like that one scene where the girl bites the guy, and then later he becomes a vampire for like the last 10 minutes of the movie. Peter Cushing is pretty much a wasted talent in this film. I would say that the location is pretty much a wasted location. To be fair, I did watch it on YouTube, and it's like a bootleg, so the quality wasn't super great. Maybe if I definitely probably would have enjoyed looking at it more on film, but the acting's not very good. The story's kind of boring. It was so bad that Robert Hartford-Davis had his name taken off of it. You will not see his name there on that poster. That's the American poster. Chevron Pictures put it out. They didn't put out too many movies. Titan, the distribution company Titan, produced and released this in Great Britain. And according to IMDb, this is the only movie that Titan ever released. Titan did produce Corruption, but Corruption was released by Columbia, actually. So that means that was a big movie. I'm trying to see, yeah, I don't think that we have any... Yeah, if you look way down at the bottom, it's kind of cut off, but it says directed by Michael Burrows. There's no such person. Robert Hartford-Davis got his name taken off, and they put up a fake name because the movie's that bad. So this one gets a 4 out of 10. And also, they started making it in 1969, and the internet seems to be confused over whether this was released in May of 1970, according to Wikipedia and a book. Wikipedia cites a book, which seems very interesting. The book is about double feature horror and sci-fi films from 1955 until 1974. So that book came out in 2019, and that book says that this came out in 1970. So that's probably true. IMDb says it came out in 1971, but actually all the other sources say 1970. The sources say that it came out in the US in 1970 and the UK in 1971, even though it's a UK film. So I guess we'll say it's a 1970 film. They started filming it in 1969. And so if you follow the trends of horror from the late 60s up through the early 70s, it keeps ramping up the graphic violence. And so from that point of view, this definitely seems more like 1969 than it does 1971. So we'll say it's a 1970 film, although it's a little bit questionable. All right. That's it. Hopefully the next one is better than this one, because this was a snooze fest. 4 out of 10. I can see why Robert Hartford-Davis had his name taken off. Those other 2 films he did are great. He also did a bunch of other films that are not horror at all, which I haven't seen. And he did a few more horror films later in life, like 72, 73, that era. So we'll talk more about him later, in another year or so. All right, see you next time.